Stewart Matzayo is here. The Majority Whip in the Senate, Dr. Boni Khalwale. The Minority Whip, if they are not here, we acknowledge them in absentia. As we get to the close, Your Excellency, you know, I said earlier that human beings have the propensity to always prefer being evil to being good. And there's our great writer called Graham Greene. He wrote many books, and I've read many of them. The Heart of the Matter, Our Man in Havana, The Confidential Agent, The Room at Midnight, My Journey Without Maps, The Power and the Glory, Quiet American. But in one of those books, The Heart of the Matter, he says, in relation to Jesus, he says, goodness has only once in humanity found a perfect incarnation in a human body, and never will it again. But evil can always find a home in the human body, and it's you to resist the temptation to be a refuge for evil. I want to encourage us as Kenyans not to be the refuge for evil, to love one another, to appreciate one another, to lift those who are below us to where we are, and to pull those behind us to walk with us, and to resist the temptation to constantly look at the negative instead of the positive in each other, so that we can build a happy country. Allow me now to invite His Excellency, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, the Honorable Professor Abraham Kithure Kindiki, to whom I have the distinction of having been his boss in the legal profession at one time. And as the paradox of life takes us, now he's my boss in the political arena. I invite him to come and say a few words, not amounting to a speech, and invite His Excellency to give us the keynote speech of the day. Thank you.
Your Excellency, President William Ruto, Your Excellency, First Lady, let me start by saying that I am not the one who took Chepkonga's slot for pupillage. Other than that, what Speaker Wetangula has said is correct. I once worked in his law firm many years ago. Your Excellency, allow me to say the following. First is to thank all those leaders who came together to start this wonderful national practice of a National Prayer Day and National Prayer Breakfast. I grew up in a family of a Methodist cleric, and there was some little message in our living room, which was in Swahili. And I've seen in many Christian homes a similar, especially while we were growing up. I don't know whether it's the same today. So there was a small thing in our living room hung up there to the effect that a family that prays together stays together. For a nation, I believe equally, just like a family, a nation that prays together will stay together. There is hope for Kenya. Number two, Your Excellency, I also want to say that this event helps us to reflect on our common destiny and take stock. And I believe it's the practice in many other countries that have a similar tradition. It's good to take stock of our journey as a nation so that we can look at what we've done well, maybe what we have not done so well, and from the scriptures and the sharing and the songs and the prayers which have been made here, we have had good moments and maybe other moments which we would have done better. And that is a good thing also, Your Excellency, because Socrates, one of the greatest philosophers, did say that a life unexamined is not worth living. It is good to examine ourselves at every point, reflect, and take stock, so that we are not on one continuous journey making good speed, but without the reflection to help us understand whether we are doing things right. And many times when we reflect, we'll find areas to correct, improve, and make the journey ahead even better. I say so because, Your Excellency, a story is told of a pilot who announced to his passengers that, ladies and gentlemen, we are making very good time. We are cruising at very good speed. But the good news ends there. The bad news is that we've lost all our instrumentation and we are not sure where we are going. So if we do not have time like this to reflect on our country's journey, we may miss one or two things there, and just like this pilot, be making good progress, but we are not sure that we are making progress to our destination. Your Excellency, allow me also again to say that we have heard the sermon, and I totally agree with the preacher of the day about the need to build relationships with each other, those who are afar, those who are near, our men and women, this generation, the other generation. And I agree, it's not only godly, but that is the most cost-effective way to handle our affairs. Your Excellency, while we are at that relation-building process, I am very happy to see today here our brothers and sisters from our neighboring countries within the East African community, and even the prayers that were made here for the continent, for the East African region, for Kenya, and for the world. And looking at the choir here, of course, the choir is much improved from last year's performance. Osoro and company, pongezi. I think there is greater harmony and greater melody than last year. Last year was a bit chaotic. But Your Excellency, I say that we need to work on these relationships continuously, and looking at what was presented here, especially with our most immediate neighbors, Tanzania, Uganda, is a good thing. And I hope some of the exchanges we've seen from our political leaders between our countries, we must use a moment like this to arrest those situations, because it doesn't look tidy when brothers and neighbors are talking at each other. We must build good relationships and sustain them. Your Excellency, in the same manner, we need to build relationships across generations. The older people, who are the age of our fathers, the parents of today, the younger adults who are starting their families, the young children, and even the unborn. That intergenerational friendship and solidarity is important. No one generation is superior or more important than the other. So I agree with the message of today's speaker, who's quite inspirational, that perhaps as older people, we need to treat our children who are now adults a little more respectfully, listen to them, and where we go wrong, there's no harm in acknowledging that we've not treated them maybe the way they expected us. However, equally, we respectfully request our children also to respect authority, and also agree to be mentored and supported, so that mutually, even as we respect them, hear them, apologize when we are wrong, they should equally respect older people, even if not for any other reason, simply because they are older, because there are things that you'll not learn in any college. You will only learn them in the school of life. Your Excellency, therefore, as much as we agree with the need for us to reconcile and build relationship with our children, we respectively request our children also to realize that there is a role we can play, not necessarily in terms of science and all the beautiful things they know from the internet, but a few tips here and there that could make their otherwise powerful lives even more powerful going forward. Your Excellency, I want to stop there, and I want to say that National Prayer Breakfast is a good tradition. It's a place to soberly look at the progress we've made as a country and acknowledge the strides we have made and also the challenges we are facing as a nation. And when we go back to prayer, we will find the solutions to our national problem, undoubtedly. I want to end by illustrating that point with the story of a Christian boy who got lost while playing in the neighborhood. And when he got lost, he was found by an adult. But he could not remember exactly where their house was. But his father was a cleric, was a pastor. And they lived next to a church. And there was a big cross on top of the church next to the home of this little boy who had gotten lost. And so when the adult asked this boy, "How do I help you, son? How do I get you back home?" The little boy could not remember the name of the street, could not remember the corner next to their home, but he remembered that their home is next to a church, and there's a cross on the church. And so he said, "If you take me near the cross, I will find my way home." Likewise, this breakfast, as much as we return here every year, it will bring us back to our destiny and redirect our nation to where it is supposed to end. I want to thank all of us. I was warned not to make a speech. I have ended up making one, but it is too late now for the Speaker to take any sanctions against me, because at this moment, I want to ask us to be upstanding as we invite His Excellency President William Ruto to come and address us. Please, a round of applause for His Excellency the President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy President. Excellencies, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and take your seats. Allow me, at the onset, to welcome all our guests from the different parts of this globe, our friends from America, from Europe, from Asia, and of course our brothers and sisters from our continent. Welcome to Kenya. In the words of Ricky Bolton, welcome home. This is an important occasion for us to come together as a nation to reflect on what God has done for us. And as we gather here this morning, and we have done this every year since the National Prayer Breakfast was launched in 2003, to pray for our nation, forge unity, and build bridges across political, religious, and community divides. Our presence today affirms the National Prayer Breakfast's pivotal role as one of Kenya's most unifying platforms for national reflection, grounded in the bipartisan and interfaith commitment of our nation and led by our parliament. The scripture in Nehemiah 2:20 tells us, "The God of heaven will prosper us. Therefore we, his servants, will arise and build." It is on that basis that we have this year's theme. Let me repeat, the God of heaven will prosper us, and therefore we, his servants, will arise and build. This verse captures the essence and core message of our gathering today. Arise and build is more than a theme. It is a sacred call to action, a renewal of our national covenant rooted in the words of our national anthem when we say, "Let one and all arise with hearts both strong and true." These words are not just a lyrical expression, but a pledge to rise in spirit, in purpose, and in unity. To rise and build is to return to the ideals that shaped our republic so that justice may be our shield and defender, and plenty may be found within our borders. The story of Nehemiah reminds us that every great national renewal begins with a desire to overcome adversity, guided by prayer, faith in God, and bold and decisive actions. Like Nehemiah, who sought and received the king's favor to build Jerusalem's broken walls, we too have received divine permission through the will of the people of Kenya in our election and the favor of history to arise and build our nation, Kenya, into a stronger, fairer, more inclusive, and united country. What made Nehemiah's mission of rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem successful was not just the plan, important as it was. It was the people, men and women, priests and merchants, nobles and laborers, who all took their respective places and stood shoulder to shoulder on the wall, laying brick by brick. As patriotic Kenyans, we must emulate this example. As government, we are committed to the urgent task of rebuilding our society, our economy, our relationships, and uplifting those at the bottom without leaving any Kenyan behind, strengthening our institutions, healing our politics, and securing lasting peace and understanding among us. And I associate fully with a sermon and the reflection that has been espoused to us by Richie Bolden, our speaker today. And Ricky, let me tell you, you're most welcome home. You are most welcome home. And while you are in Kenya, enjoy every bit of what Kenya has to offer. You are in the midst of brothers and sisters and friends and relatives and compatriots. And when you go back to America, please take our greetings to the great people of your country. And you have spoken to us the word of God in a very special way to build the relationships as we do everything else that we're doing, rebuilding our country in the midst of the challenges that exist, that we must, as we build our nation in every other aspect, we must also build relationships between ourselves, between us and the people on the other side of the aisle, between us and the generations that are ahead of us and the generations that come after us, between us and our neighbors, between us and the countries of our region in the East Africa, the African continent, and globally. And that is why in this prayer breakfast, we have people from across the world. We have seen people from different parts of the world come and fellowship with us on this occasion as we build a globe that belongs to all of us in a shared world. And from where I sit, there are many things that we can say, but equally, we have many things to thank God for our nation. We have many things to thank God for our nation. I say this without fear of any contradiction. There are many people who had given up on the economy of Kenya. There are many, including very senior people globally, who told me to my face that what will happen when Kenya defaults on its foreign obligations. And I told them, I have great faith in my country. Kenya will not be among the nations that will default. I want to thank the people of this great nation, Kenyans, who wake up early, sleep late, work in our farms, work in our factories, work in offices. Many people who commit their talents, their energy, their expertise to get Kenya moving. Because of them, our economy today is different from what it was a few years ago. Inflation was at 9%, 9.6 to be exact, 3 years ago. Today, inflation in Kenya is at 4.1. It had actually gone down to 2.8. Our exchange rate was at 167. Today, for the last 10 months, our exchange rate has stabilized at 128, 129 shillings to a dollar. Today, our foreign exchange reserves are stable. Yesterday, I had an occasion to look at the numbers with Roslyn, our principal secretary for diaspora. I don't know whether she's here. And speaking to diaspora and what they are doing in supporting our nation. In the last 2 years, people in diaspora have contributed resources to Kenya, going up from $4 billion. Last year, we reached $4.95 billion. In other words, our diaspora has contributed an extra close to $1 billion. And so we can count as a blessing that God has healed our economy. I also want to thank God for what he has done to us, especially in our agricultural sector and food production sector. A few years ago, not too long, we had stunts in our streets because of hunger. I must say, and I must thank God, that God has given us favorable weather. And we want to thank God for the rains in our nation. For the last 2.5 years, we've had favorable weather. Our agriculture is doing well. We have increase in our tea sector. We have a better paying coffee sector. We have reformed our sugar sector. It is doing well. And our tea and our milk dairy sector is equally improving. We thank God for the blessing of having food on our tables, for having our agricultural sector moving in the right direction. Let me also say this. Our children are a heritage given to us by God. And the best gift we can give to our children is to make sure that they have the best education. And it is the reason why I must thank members of parliament who have supported me in making sure that we have resources to make sure that we teach our children. Last year, we spent 650 billion Kenya shillings, almost $5 billion, to get our children. Hired more teachers, spend more money on our higher education, and our education sector is coming out of huge debts. I must say, we have reason to thank God for what God is doing in our country. Let me also say this, that doctors treat, but God heals. And For a very long time, proper medical care was a preserve of the people who can afford and the people who have the means. We have, as a nation, tried for a very long time to have a healthcare infrastructure that supports everybody, that gives every Kenyan a chance. I must thank our doctors. I must thank our nurses, the medical people in the medical space. I must thank members of parliament. I must thank governors who work with us to make sure that the rollout of a healthcare system that gives every Kenyan a fair chance, whether they have a job or they don't. Today, we have testimonies across Kenya of what universal health care, Taifa Care, is doing in our nation. I must say, I am very proud that we have moved the number of Kenyans who today are registered on our universal healthcare space from what it was, about 8 million Kenyans. Today we have 22.5 million Kenyans who are in that space. And the good news is that every day, I mean every single day, approximately 50,000 Kenyans register voluntarily on our universal healthcare portal. And the future is going to ensure that no Kenyan is left behind on such an important subject as the health of the citizens of our country. And it hasn't happened because of one person or a few people. It has taken the collective effort of all of us as a country, as a nation, to get ourselves where we are. And it speaks to what Nehemiah is telling us about rebuilding the wall. It wasn't a Nehemiah project. It was a project of every person. In fact, if you look at what the scriptures say, even as they rebuilt the wall, they were holding on one hand weapons to make sure that they are safe, and on the other hand, they are rebuilding the wall. They were multitasking to make sure that the wall was built. I am asking us, as the people of Kenya, for us to work together. I had a moment of great reflection last week when I went to hand over keys to the first 1,080 homeowners, people we have given a chance because of our housing program. People who live, families who share one toilet, like 5, 6 families in our slums. People who otherwise had no hope of ever owning a home. Today, they live with dignity. And it doesn't stop at the 1,080. Tomorrow, I will be handing over more keys in Kisumu. On Friday, I will be handing more keys in Homa Bay. The week after, I will be handing over more keys in Machakos. And that process is on. We have 150,000 housing units under construction. And it is my belief that we will have more homeowners. We will give dignity to many more Kenyans. And I must say, this has not happened because of a few people. Patriotic Kenyans, Kenyans from all walks of life, have made a contribution. The people who are making their contribution to the housing fund, the engineers, the masons, the carpenters, the electricians, and everybody in between have made their contribution as we rebuild our nation and lift people from a place of indignity and put them at a place where we can all be brothers. I must thank members of parliament also and county governors. We've worked with them, identifying places where we can do markets, worked with the universities and colleges to identify places where we can do hostels, so that again we can give dignity to our business people and our children in our universities and colleges. We will continue to do this together, and we must be careful to thank God for the blessing of a great country that we have and the strides that we are making together as a people. And even as we rebuild relationships amongst ourselves, with our sons and daughters, with our children, with neighbors, with our neighboring countries, and all round, we must be careful always to thank God for what God has done to us and for us as a nation. Because it is said, if we are not grateful, if we are not thankful for the little, we can never be grateful for more. And therefore, I want to ask us as a nation, as a people, to work together, to do less of finding fault, and to do more of building bridges that can make us even a greater nation. I stand here to tell you that I am confident about the future of Kenya. And I have no doubt in my mind that Kenya is truly a blessed nation. And the future of our country, no matter what happens, is going to be greater than our past. And so, ladies and gentlemen, friends, our neighbors from Tanzania, if we have wronged you in any way, forgive us. Our friends from Uganda, if there is anything that Kenyans have done that's not right, we want to apologize if there is anything. To our children, if there is any misstep, we apologize. To our neighbors, if there is any misstep that we have done, you know, we want to build the relationship that will make our country great and will take us forward. And to each and every one of us, you know, I know today God in his own way has made it possible for us to build the bridges between our political parties. We now have a broad-based government that brings us more people, more citizens, more into one ecosystem that we can plan together, we can work together for the greater good of our nation. And I want to remind you, great people of my country, the words of Psalms 133, verses 1, 2, and 3. And I want to paraphrase to say that the Word of God tells us how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to live together in unity. It is in God's perfect will and plan for us to live together in unity across political divides, across our communities, across our religious divides. We live together in unity because there is a reason. Verse 3 says, where there is unity, God commands a blessing. There is a dividend for unity. And that dividend is God's blessing. And so, friends, as I speak to the future of this great nation, I will paraphrase the words in Daniel 11:32 that say, for those who know their God, they will be strong and they will do great exploits. Because as a nation we know our God, the God we believe in, this nation is going to be strong and we are going to do great exploits. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless our country. God bless our neighbors. And God bless our friends who have come to join us today. Asanteni sana.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Let me call upon the Speaker of the Senate, the Honorable Kingi, to come and give a vote of thanks.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Her Excellency, the First Lady, Mama Rachel, His Excellency, the Deputy President, and your lovely wife. Ladies and gentlemen, my duty here is very brief, is to pass a word of appreciation to those who've worked tirelessly to make sure that the 2025 prayer breakfast is indeed a success. You will agree with me that the 2025 prayer breakfast has been a big success. Now, the Swahili say, ukiona velea, jua vimeundwa. Behind this success, the men and women who've worked tirelessly, slept less to make sure that we have this event. These are the people that we wish to acknowledge and appreciate for their big support for making sure that we have this wonderful event today. But first, allow me to thank the Almighty for giving us the gift of life and allowing us to gather here today to fellowship. Were it not for his mercies, all these plans would have gone to waste. So our first appreciation goes to the Almighty God for gathering us here to fellowship together. We also want to appreciate the presence of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya. Mr. President, thank you so much for finding time every year to lead this nation into prayer. You have acknowledged indeed in your speech here today that without God, nothing will be possible. Mr. President, the word today that has been spoken to us speaks directly to you as our leader and also speaks to us as Kenyans. The book of Nehemiah is not just intended for the leader, it is also intended to those who are supposed to follow the leader. When Nehemiah went to Jerusalem to rebuild the walls of the city after having been destroyed by the Babylonians, the first thing he acknowledged is that he could not do it alone. He needed the people of Jerusalem to work with him to rebuild the wall. And that's why in the book of Nehemiah, we are being told that Nehemiah rallied the people to work together with him to make sure that the wall of Jerusalem is restored and built. Likewise, Mr. President, when you took the reins of power in 2022, you inherited a very battered economy. The shilling was at its weakest. The prices of common household commodities was at the highest. Just like Nehemiah, you wanted to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. But in your case, you wanted to rebuild the economy of this country. And I remember in your speech in Kasarani, you indeed said, I can only rebuild this economy with the support of each and every Kenyan, just like Nehemiah did when he went to Jerusalem. And therefore, to fellow Kenyans, our president could be well-meaning. Our president could be the most hard-working president, but him alone cannot rebuild the battered economy of this country. Each one of us have a role to play in rebuilding this country. And I'm reminded of the words of John F. Kennedy in 1961 during his inaugural address. And he said this, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Fellow Kenyans, we have a responsibility. Yes, we have a leader who has a bigger responsibility, but if we leave it to the president alone, this country will not be rebuilt. I think that is what I picked from the message today. Now, we have our 2025 sponsors who gave in kind and in cash to make sure that this event is a success. The first, of course, is the Parliament of Kenya, both the Senate and the National Assembly. The second is Kenya Power and Lighting Company, followed by NK Brothers, small groups, not as in small groups, but that is the name of the group, small groups. And the fifth one is Mburu of Landmark. These were the 2025 sponsors. We want to say a big thank you, asanteni sana, for standing with us to make sure that we have a wonderful event today. Now, we have the legacy sponsors, ABC Bank, Almasi Beverages, APA Insurance, Bamburi Cement, Bidco Car and General, Cooperative Bank, World Vision, Stardom Hotels, Sanlam, Safari Park Hotels and Casino, the Privatization Commission, Parklands Baptist Church, National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NK Brothers Limited, Makiga Limited, Qual Agencies, Jumbo Chem Kenya Limited, East African Portland Summit, DT Dobi Kenya, Wonder Joy Party World, and small prayer groups. These are the institutions that came out to stand with us to make sure that today we have this very, very successful event. In the event that your name has missed out from this list and you stood with us to midwife the success of this event, please do not take offense. I also say thank you to you. Now, of course, without our guest speaker, this event would have been hollow. And therefore, we want to pass appreciation to Dr. Rick Bolden for flying all the way to from the United States of America back home, as he said, to come and talk to us, to share that which God had given you, to share with your brethren. Lastly, to all participants from within and beyond the Kenyan borders, thank you so much for finding time to come fellowship with us, pray with us, worship with us, and praise the Lord with us. This tent is such a wonderful dome, but without you having found time to come here, certainly it will not have served its purpose. So thank you so much for finding time to come and commune, to worship, praise the Lord with us. I want all of us, look at your neighbor on the right, shake his hand, and tell him thank you so much for finding time to come to fellowship with us. Thank you. Asante. And with that, we return the glory to the Almighty until we meet again next year, 2026. Thank you so much.